Hey friend, if showing up in your content feels heavy or just not like the thing that you want to be focusing on right now because you've got a lot of other stuff going on in your life, this episode is for you. Maybe you're in a grief wave or going through a depressive episode, or maybe you're just feeling burnt out. Life can just be a lot sometimes, and you might have a lot going on with your kids or your parents or your friends, or you might have health things going on. When you're dealing with a lot in your life, it can feel impossible sometimes to show up in your content and keep showing up consistently. And maybe you've heard some of my episodes talking about how important it is to show up consistently so that people can see the value of your work and have thought, that just doesn't feel possible right now. But you still care about your work. You care about your people. You care about the message that you have to send. The thought of being consistent just makes your nervous system want to explode. So take a breath with me. Breathe in and out. Today, we're going to be talking about creating content in a season of survival. We're not just hustling through it. We're not going to slap toxic positivity on top of it. We're going to acknowledge that sometimes life is really, really, really hard. And we're going to talk about staying visible with compassion for yourself and your situation using simple structures that work when your capacity is low. So let's get into it. Hey, beautiful human. You're listening to Bold Women in Business, the show where strategy meets soul in marketing, branding, and business growth. I'm your host, Rachel Honeyman, messaging and branding strategist, content queen, and compulsive meeting maker. Every week, I'll help you ditch the cookie cutter playbook and build a brand that actually sounds like you, sells like hell, and feels so damn good to show up for. Let's get bold. First, let's just talk about what I mean by a season of survival. Here's my definition. A season of survival is not forever, right? Sometimes people's lives just continue to be hard forever and ever and ever. Some situations are just ongoing difficult. That to me is not the same as a season of survival where you have specific things going on that are causing right now, this moment in time. And this moment in time could be weeks or months. Sometimes it can be years. Hopefully not. But it can't just be something that, let's say you were born with a debilitating illness. That isn't really a season of survival, right? Because that's your life. So working around your life is different than working around a season of things just being really, really hard right now. Maybe you lost someone that you love, or finances are really tight right at this moment, or you're going through an episodic illness. Like I mentioned, maybe a depressive episode. That's kind of what I'm talking about when I'm saying a season of survival, where your capacity is just stretched right now at this moment in time. I think a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today apply also if you are kind of living a life of survival, which I hope you're not. I really hope you're not. I hope that you're living a life that is generally of thriving, right? Not just surviving, but that's not the reality for everyone. So I think that there are things that you can take from this episode regardless. But what I'm talking about right now is when you're in a really, really tough spot right now. Because there are seasons when we feel energized and we're sprinting and launching and doing a million things. And then there are seasons when success is just, I'm staying visible. That's it, right? I'm staying visible in whatever way that looks like. I stayed present enough that people who need me can still find me in my business. In survival, the mantra is less output, more integrity, more compassion for yourself. It's not about trying to win the internet. You have to focus on just being discoverable and trustworthy and human. As I'm recording this, I am in a season of survival right now. I think by the time it goes live, I probably will be on the other side of this season of survival. I hope, because it's not going live for a little bit. But right now, I am going through a really ramped up period of grief, those old feelings of depression to ramp up as well. At the same time, I'm having just an uptick in my chronic pain issues that I deal with all the time. I have low back pain for many years. I've got an elbow injury I'm dealing with. I've got lots of other health stuff going on that has ramped up at the same time, probably not coincidentally. And oh, wait, there's another layer here. We're right in the midst of the Jewish holiday season. So I observe all the Jewish holidays. And what that means is that when there's a Jewish holiday, I shut down completely. I am not online. I am not sending emails. I am not responding to anything. My computer is untouched. My phone is off for those days. And so the way that the Jewish holidays fell out this year is all weekdays. And I wound up losing, I think it's 11 days total in between September and October. So I'm navigating all of that with my client projects, which thank God I am very busy at the moment. And so I'm dealing with all of that. And I am staying intentional about remaining visible for my audience. So this is very much a season of survival for me. And yet I'm staying consistent with my content. But consistency looks a little different these days than it normally would. So what I'm going to give you today are a few simple frameworks, and you can choose which one speaks to you. Or you can try one out, you can try a different one out. It doesn't really matter. But these are some frameworks to help you stay visible to your audience, not let this season of survival push your business into a state of not surviving, right? Because if we're not posting or we're not staying visible to our audience, we're putting our business at risk. And I don't want you to do that. That's not the goal here. But I do want you to be able to show up in a way that feels aligned, that does not make your nervous system want to explode, and that honors this state that you're in. You are in a season of survival, and hopefully you'll get on the other side of that really, really soon. And you'll be back in a state of launching things and putting out tons of content and just growth and growth and growth. But it's really hard to grow when you're in a state of just trying to keep your head above water. So these frameworks are just going to give you some tools that will help this feel doable. Number one is minimum viable visibility, MVV. MVV is all about picking one channel, one format, one slot on your calendar. This is where you just strip away. You strip away anything that is not necessary. You're going to choose where your people actually see you. What feels most doable right now? So, is that a quick Instagram reel once a week? Is that a LinkedIn post once a week? Is that an email that you send to your audience once a week? What's easiest for you to create right now? Is a 3-slide carousel the easiest? Is a quick 6 to 10 line LinkedIn post or a 200-word email or a 45-second talking to the camera reel? It doesn't really matter. The idea is you're picking one day a week, one time slot. You're going to put it in your calendar and treat it like you would treat a meeting with a client. This is when you're actually showing up for yourself as your client, and you're creating that one piece of content that feels most doable for you right now. And if you do one piece once a week in the same place at roughly the same time, that's a win. It just keeps you findable. It keeps you present. Is it enough in a season of growth? No, I'm not going to tell you that it is, but it is enough to just keep the engine turning, right? You're keeping things moving and you're still flexing that muscle so that when you get out of this season of survival, you're ready to ramp back up. It doesn't feel like starting from scratch. Number two, our second framework is the SOS content ladder. You're just going through what can you do right now today. This matches your content to your energy today. So there are 4 rungs on this ladder. When you are in a really, really tight spot, right? You go to that slot on your calendar and you say, I don't have 30 minutes to create a piece of content. I just don't have it. I am so wiped. I am so burnt out. What you do have is 2 to 5 minutes. You for sure have that. And all I want you to do is write one paragraph or reshare someone else's post with a 1-line reflection, just something to stay on top of people's minds, right? And so even a 1-paragraph post, you could say, well, okay, my main channel is Instagram. How am I going to apply that to there? Just go into your notes on your phone, write out 1 paragraph. It doesn't matter if there are typos. It just doesn't matter. Write something that you want to say. And it can even be something that you've said before, because as I've talked about in previous episodes, it's okay to say the same thing over and over again. In fact, it's great to say the same thing over and over again. People will start to associate you with that thing. So you can just write a 1-paragraph note, take a screenshot, just crop it to the size that it needs to be for Instagram and post it. Just post that as a post. You can put some music on it if you want to. It doesn't have to be anything mega impactful, right? It doesn't have to be something groundbreaking. It doesn't have to be something that is super share worthy. The important thing is that you're staying visible and you're showing up as the human that you are and talking about the difficult things that you're going through, even if you don't want to go into details, but just acknowledging that you're going through a tough time and letting your audience know they might not see you quite as much as they're used to seeing you. That's okay. It's great. So that's number one. Rung one is the 2 to 5 minute prompt. Then we've got our next rung, which is our 10 to 15 minute, right? You have 10 to 15 minutes. You have a little bit more energy today. You can write a short email to send to your audience. You can create a 3-slide carousel, something simple. Maybe you can create a quick talking to the camera reel, whatever is easy to create within 10 to 15 minutes. And set a timer. Whatever you feel you have the bandwidth to do today, set a timer and do that right now. The third rung is our 25 to 30 minute window. You've got a little bit more energy today. You've got a little bit more bandwidth. Great. That's a great amount of time to create a short reel or a, maybe 400 to 600 word email or a little bit of a longer post for LinkedIn, whatever your channel is. Remember, you're picking one channel, one format, and once a week. That's it. So just whatever your format is, if you're writing text posts for LinkedIn, if that's your format, one day when you have very little energy or very little time, you might write just a couple of lines. On a day when you have 10 to 15 minutes, it might be a paragraph or two. And on a day when you have 25 to 30 minutes, you might write like a much more extensive post for LinkedIn. Then we've got our fourth rung, which is our 45 to 60 minute block of time. You just miraculously, even in this season of survival, have this moment to breathe. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes we just say, I haven't had a moment to breathe in a while. I'm going to just do something with that time. That's when you have the opportunity to create a long form piece of content, and you can then repurpose that content on those other days when you have less energy, less time. But you have this long form piece of content that you can work from. Those should only be saved for those green light days when you have the energy, you have the time. When you're not in a season of survival, yes, we want long form content, right? We want to create that pillar content that you can repurpose up the wazoo. But when you're in a season of survival and all you can do is one post a week, save those long form, in-depth posts or pieces of content for those days when you miraculously have the time and energy. And you're not going to be climbing the rung each week. That's not how this works. It's really dependent on where you are that day. That's it. I just want to be clear. This is not a ladder that you're climbing perpetually. Some weeks you're going to be at that 2 to 3 minute mark, 2 to 5 minute mark. And some weeks you're going to be at the 45 minute mark. And some weeks you're going to be at the 30 minute mark. And some weeks you're going to be at the 15 minute mark. And it's really not going to go sequentially. It's going to depend on what's going on in your life right now at this moment. And how are you feeling right now at this moment? What can you create? But the important thing is making that commitment, putting that time in your calendar, and then deciding, how am I using this time? Am I just setting a timer for 3 minutes and creating whatever I can in 3 minutes? Am I setting a timer for longer? And that's a decision point. Quick pause. Can we talk about content for a second? If you're staring at a blank screen more often than you're hitting post, it might be because you're trying to create content that doesn't fit your actual strengths. It's kind of like wearing someone else's jeans. They may look super good on your friend, but you put them on and they are not comfortable and they just aren't doing your butt any favors. That's why I created the Content Marketing Power Type quiz. It's free and it helps you figure out the kind of content you were made to create. The kind of content that feels natural, sustainable, and actually connects with your people in a way that lights you up. In just 45 seconds, or maybe even 30 if you're quick about it, you're going to find out your power type and get custom recommendations to make content feel easier and more effective. Head on over to honeybeebold.com/quiz. That's honeybeebold.com/quiz. Take it and then DM me your result because I kind of need to know. All right, let's dive back into the episode. The next framework is the 3-2-1 cycle. This is for when your brain is fried and decision making is just the ultimate enemy. So we make it automatic. You've got 3 riffs, okay? Grab 3 old posts or client notes or podcast transcripts, copy paste the bit that still hits, and write 1 new first line. Or just paste that into ChatGPT and ask for a revised version. Then you've got 2 reposts. Reshare 2 past top performing posts with a "what I'd add now" sentence. Or honestly, you could just copy paste that post and reshare it. And then you've got your 1 anchor, and that's your 1 original minimum viable visibility post for the week. So schedule the riffs and reposts when you have capacity, do that anchor MVV post when you have that time in your calendar, and then that's already a full week of presence without reinventing the wheel. Framework 4 is the spare parts method. Here, you're going to start with 1 scrap that you already have. Maybe you sent yourself a voice memo, or you have a line from a client email, or a paragraph from your notes, something that isn't complete. You're going to turn that 1 thing into a caption or a carousel or a CTA line, and you can lean heavily on ChatGPT for that. Just make sure that you are infusing it with your human touch. The idea here, right, this whole idea of creating content in a season of survival is that your humanity should be coming through more than ever. The flaws and the challenges and the hard things that you're going through should be coming through more than ever. So we don't want to just post generic ChatGPT content, but it's such a good tool for taking unfinished ideas and turning it into something that is shareable. Framework 5, this is really only going to work when you have a little bit more breathing room, but it's a good framework. Having 2 timers per week. These timers can be kind of as long or as short as you want them to be, but I think 25 minutes is a really good amount of time. So timer 1, 25 minutes, you're going to draft 3 possible hooks for this piece of content that you're creating for your MVV. All you need is the hook, just the idea. What is the idea that we're playing with here? Timer 2 is going to also be 25 minutes. You're just going to pick one of those 3 and you're going to expand it, polish it, and schedule it. That's it. So it actually breaks it into 2 sections, but the reason I say that you need a little bit more bandwidth, freedom, ease, space is just because sometimes putting 2 25-minute timers on your calendar when you're in this season of survival is really, really, really tough. But here's what's important. You don't need to do all of these. They can work really well together, but they don't need to work together. If you have more in the tank, great. And if not, your only job is to show up. MVV is the only one of these frameworks that must be followed, where you're picking 1 format of content, 1 platform, 1 day a week. That's it. And you have that day and that time scheduled in your calendar. Everything else flows from there. When you're creating content in a survival season, boundaries are not just part of the strategy, they are the strategy. Boundaries are going to protect you from getting burnt out and having this really negative association with content that so many people do, because that's never what I want for you. I never want you to feel this sense of dread with creating your content. We want to create content that fuels us, that makes us feel excited to share what we're doing with our audience. Sometimes when you're in that season of survival, that feels less doable. But the idea here is that we're still sticking within the boundaries that feel doable. One thing that's important to note here is that when you're creating content in a survival season and you want to share vulnerably, and I talked about this in a previous episode, kind of showing up with authenticity. We talked about that in the episode with Diana Davis, and I talked about it in the episode following that. There's a lot to be said about creating content in a really authentic way. When you're in this survival season, it's really important to honor your boundaries and to maintain your boundaries. Okay, how do we gauge success in a survival season? Because we're not going to see the same types of results as we would if we were creating content in a really built out, consistent schedule. We just aren't. That's the reality. How do you gauge success? So we are measuring what actually matters, which is your input. Did I publish 1 MVV piece this week? That alone is a win. If you did that, you succeeded this week. Another way of gauging success is connection. Did you have some meaningful connections this month you can pick a really low number. It can be 3 to 5 meaningful replies or DMs or something, some way of connecting with the people that you're speaking to. Ease is another way of gauging success. What was your effort score out of 5 this week? If that number is trending down, you are designing better systems and you're showing up in a way that's really aligned with yourself. If things are feeling harder and harder, that's a really good sign that it's time to take a look at what's going on and really reevaluate, how are you creating that content? How are you showing up in your business? And then also looking at how long it's taking you to create a piece of content, right? If it used to take you an hour to create a reel and now it's taking you 30 minutes, that is a win. That is a massive win. So just really recognize how you're showing up in your business, but understand that the most important thing is that you're being present in your business and you're still honoring that need for being in this season of survival, whatever is going on, right? You're not just pushing that down. You're paying attention to it without neglecting your business. I often talk about this idea that messaging should be helping you convert with heart. And in a survival season, the whole with heart part looks like telling the truth without bleeding out online, right? You're posting consistently without tearing yourself apart, and you're protecting your voice so that you are still able to use it next month and the next month and the next month. And when you practice this MVV, this minimum viable visibility, you're not just staying top of mind for people, but you're also kind of staying top of mind for yourself, right? When you get out of practice of creating content for your business, it's really hard to get back on the bike, as it were, right? When you're still showing up drip by drip by drip, you're building trust with your audience, but you're also building trust with yourself, and you're giving yourself this understanding that creating content doesn't have to be so hard. And then when you get out of this season, when the clouds lift, you're ready to jump back in full force. So again, to recap, you're going to pick one channel, one format, one weekly slot. Choose your rung on the SOS ladder. What amount of time can you give to this today? What is the energy level that you have? If you want to be sharing more content, use that 3-2-1 framework where you have 3 things to riff off of, you've got 2 reposts, and you've got 1 anchor content. You can use the spare parts method where you're just taking one scrap piece of content and creating a caption or a carousel or a CTA from it. And then measure survival by looking at your inputs, your connections, your sense of ease, and your time saved. That, my friend, is your survival stack. I just want to reiterate that whether you're listening to this right now in a season of survival, or you have experienced this before, or you experience this in the future, save this episode because it's going to be such a good reminder. We all go through those seasons. I wish I could say to you, like, maybe you won't need this episode. No, you're going to need it. I'm so sorry. I wish that I didn't have to say that, but you're probably going to need it because life's a lot. The important thing is to know that you can show up, you can stay visible without burning yourself out. And it's so important to both honor the season that you're in, know that you're going through a hard time and acknowledge it, and honor the business that you're building, right? You don't want to just suddenly neglect that business just because you're going through a hard time. We don't want to let our businesses wither because of what's going on, right? So this is a way of maintaining both your business and yourself in a really aligned way. If you are struggling with this at all, or if you need support with your content while you're going through this, please reach out, because you don't have to go through this alone. And sometimes when you're in that season of survival, even going through the frameworks that I just provided feel totally not possible, but you know that you still need to be showing up. So please reach out. I would love to help you and support you while you're going through this, or at any other time for that matter. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. All right, beautiful human. That's a wrap on this episode of Bold Women in Business. This episode was brought to you by my company, Honey Be Bold, with music by Shmukulele. But before you go, don't forget to take the Content Marketing Power Type quiz at honeybeebold.com/quiz, because when your content fits your power type, showing up gets way easier and your marketing actually starts working for you. Until next time, stay bold, stay kind, and keep doing it your way.